Hi, Isabel. Thank you for sharing your discussion. Um, I really like the points you pointed out in your video, and I just kind of wanted to add on a few things from what I noticed or from what you spoke about. Um, so, ways to improve and make sure that counselors have an accurate um, program through assessing. You had mentioned that it helps understand if the counseling program is helping students, and being able to assess and review our data and send out surveys and test different variables and different scenarios helps. It is work on our part, but it helps understand if the program is helping the students. So for example, it could be either um, ensuring that students are seeing the counselor, having time to actually see the counselor, making sure the counselor is doing counseling duties and not just wandering around and passing time doing other things in her office and not making time for the students. And another way to do that is by sending out surveys. And when I had interviewed my school counselor, she had said that at the end of the year, the counselor sends out a survey to students from second to fifth grade. And that just asks students, because it's a survey that students only take, and then the teachers have to monitor to make sure that the students are answering and not just clicking through it. And it asks the students questions about if they know who the school counselor is. Do they feel safe? Do they know who the social worker is? Do they know where the counselor's office is? Do they feel comfortable at school? And things like that. Do they feel like their counselor listens to them? And I feel that is a good survey to send to students. But at the same time, it goes with what you had mentioned in one of the challenges is when you're collecting data, a downfall from sending out surveys, because we receive, as teachers, receive so many surveys often that a lot of the times we kind of just rush through it without really reading it or take it seriously, because we just think, oh, it's just another survey. It's just not really, like, it's just a thing we need to do on to check off the to-do list, because sometimes the surveys that we get sent out, some of them are mandatory, and then some of them the principal does say that it's optional to do them. But in this case, since it's a student survey and it's toward the end of the year already, I know that a lot of students tend to just like kind of click and skim through them. So that could be a downfall of sending out surveys often and always only using that as a tool to assess the counseling program. And going to tie it into what you had said in point 2 that I had wrote down was improvement. So instead of using the same strategies year after year, like for example, this survey, instead of student surveys at the end of the year, instead of using the same strategies year after year, because not every strategy is universal and it won't fit all needs of the students, and it won't fit every scenario, because there's a different, each case is different. And although it contains teachers, staff, students, admin within the same school, but each school year is different because of the population and the different events that students go through in their lives. So this can tie into reviewing data for perfect attendance, things like that. For example, the weather, where I live down here in the Rio Grande Valley, it's hardly ever cold. So this usually gets colder around January, February. That's when our winter is. And even then, it's like 40s, 50s. And to upstate Texas, these kids sometimes go to school in the snow, and down here it never snows. But when it does, um, when it does snow, we either have, sorry, it never snows here. When it gets real cold here, they often try not to cancel school. Instead, they have a delayed start. So this can affect the perfect attendance. And this past time there was a benchmark and they had to delay it for a code day. So they had to move the benchmark and all of that. When you're reviewing their data and you're reviewing the perfect attendance data and the benchmark data, weather can take an effect into it as well. So it's not all the same and compared to as if those weather days didn't happen, or if we were used to that weather, then the students would not be affected by it. So that could just be another factor that affects the data. Okay, and then let me see real quick. So the last one is reviewing data. Groups of students not receiving enough support. I just really stand by this. Students can receive support in different ways, and I feel one way to do that's very difficult is, there's a lot of behavioral issues in the classroom. So this is just one that I feel, if there was a screening where students could do for like autism or ADHD, things like that, I feel like it would be very beneficial to parents, to students, and just I feel like that would be a good thing to evaluate and assess in our schools. In each classroom, there's a lot of disabilities, learning disabilities, and special education disabilities, and I feel this needs to be more studied to support everyone, because we hurt the students when teachers cannot provide students with what they need, one, and then two, if the classroom environment is not fit for their needs and teachers are just left in the room to fend for themselves without proper help and support for those students, it is difficult for them, and then it affects the attendance, it affects the scores, and so on and so on. But I'll just stop here and thank you for sharing, and I'll see you next week.